Hey guys, this is Colin Zhu, aka the Chef Doc, and if you're like me, then you love listening to podcasts. My favorite are the educational ones. Love learning audibly as well? Then you'll fall in love with audio courses on Listenable. Want to learn communication skills and level up your social game? Or are you on a health kick and looking to learn more about fitness? Whatever you're into, there's an audio course for you on Listenable. With Listenable, you can enjoy 5-minute audio lessons while commuting, exercising, or walking your dog. You can choose from over 3,000 plus original audio lessons created by well-loved experts. Use the coupon code COLINZHU, COLINZHU at listenable.io, and you'll get 30% off a year of Listenable. Just check out the show notes below. Thanks for listening, and now back to Thrive Bites. Hey guys, welcome to Thrive Bites, the official podcast of Dr. Colin Zhu, aka the Chef Doc. On every episode, I talk with health and wellness experts from all over the world, such as doctors, chefs, dietitians, coaches, and many more. And I sit down with them and have casual conversations about plant-based lifestyle, how to elevate our emotional resilience, and what it really means to thrive. And I bring all of this to you. So let's get to this week's episode. Okay, guys, well, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites. I'm your host, Colin Zhu, and thank you for listening on. Today, we have a wonderful, wonderful guest with us today. We have Chef Ramses Bravo. Say hi to everyone, Chef.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
We are so happy to have him here today. For those of you who do not know who he is, Chef Bravo is the executive chef for True North Health in Santa Rosa, California. And he's the creator of BravoPB.com, where you can find all of his interactive culinary courses, seminars, webinars, his resources, his recipes. And although he's trained as a regular chef, he, like he says, has had a little intervention from the universe. And since that, I'm sure he'll share that with us. He's found himself working as a plant-based chef, and he's been doing it for 12 plus years now. And he's currently the author of Bravo Cookbook and Bravo Express Cookbook as well. So thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
My first question is, I love learning about how people's origin of story is. And what I mean by that is pretty much how do they get from point A to point B. Usually, we go through a lot of what I like to call the roller coaster, of life. And, there's a lot of hurdles and obstacles that we go through, but it also adds and paints, a very, very colorful history for people. And, yours, as described on your website, has been very, very colorful. So I would like to know, what has been your inspiration, from the start to get into the culinary arts? Let's start with that. What was your inspiration to, go from point A to point B? Okay.
Well, first of all, my story is not a, point A is here, point B is there, and it's a straight line, Mm-hmm. Like you said, it's a big roller coaster. So my story begins back when I was 8, 9, growing up in my grandmother's kitchen and loving food. I've always loved to eat. I've always loved to, try new things, food wise. And so that kind of stuck with me. So by the time I was in high school, I knew what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be when I grew up. So while everybody was, going to the career days and the, all the, maybe this college, maybe that college, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going to go to culinary school in San Francisco, and that was going to be the beginning of my journey because I knew being a chef, that was my thing.
And you said your grandmother influenced you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is she, what was it like? Was it cooking with her? Was it, in big family, parties, holidays? Like what was the cooking atmosphere growing up for you?
Well, so I grew up in Mexico City, and so we had a family of probably around 10 to 15, and that's because some of them would come and go, kind of a thing. My aunts and
Mhm.
uncles would sometimes show up, sometimes not, depending
Mhm.
on their jobs or whatnot. Um, but aside from that, my grandmother used to cook for an office building. So essentially, she would, it was sort of like you'd call it like a step below a restaurant. She would, cook a three-course meal every day.
Mhm.
Everybody would get the same thing, and people from that office would show up. And she would have, it was mostly regulars, and some people would kind of be in and out. But because of this, she would make, different meals every day in large quantities.
Mhm.
And so I got to help many a times, whether it was grating the cheese back then or whipping up the egg whites or slicing this, chopping that, helping with the what we call the aguas frescas, which is the
Mhm.
flavored, ice drinks sort of a thing.
Mhm.
Because it was in quantities, it was like, man, we're really working. For a 8, 9 year old kid, it was pretty cool.
That's
So
awesome. So it was almost like her own version of a catering business, so to speak, right?
yeah, kind of, yes.
Awesome, awesome. And what was the food scene like, in Mexico City during that time?
Oh well, excuse me, the food scene back in the time, as it is now, it's a lot of street fare. A lot of people eat out on the street because they commute to their jobs,
Hmm.
and it's very different from the U.S. So you have your light breakfast there, and then your main meal happens between 2 and 4. So
Hmm.
everybody takes like this 2 hour lunch break, uh,
Hmm.
which for people there is their main meal break.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, because they've had to travel, an hour and a half away from their home,
Hmm.
they'll go to a street corner restaurant, or there's a lot of places like what my grandmother had, where there's somebody in the office building. Hey, this woman makes really good food, and she's willing to cook for however many of us show up, and
Hmm.
people go, and it's all sorts of different things. Mostly surrounding corn, tortillas.
Yeah.
So with tortillas, you have tacos, you have enchiladas, you have tostadas, you have tortilla soup, and you have
And
so
would she make it her own, like the maize and like actually roll it out and all that stuff?
sometimes for certain things she was very adamant about making it handmade.
Hmm.
For other things, she would buy the tortillas, and it's also very different in Mexico. In Mexico, you have what's called a tortillerias. It's
Hmm.
one shop where they make fresh tortillas to order, and that's all they do. It's not
Hmm.
like in the U.S. where you go to any grocery store and you buy something that comes in a bag.
Mm.
Over
Hmm.
there, you buy it, half a kilo or 1 kilo, and it's fresh. They're nice and hot, just right out of the machine.
Mm.
So in a way, they're like, freshly handmade kind of a thing, even though they
Hmm.
come from a machine, but they're fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you appreciate it as well. I mean, I, I think fresh food is, there's nothing better than that. And, Mexico, I've never been, I've always wanted to go to Mexico City, and I understand it to be a very, metropolitan, area. And with that, you have, just people living in the urban life just busier. They're always going back and forth. So I can imagine, street fare being, very, very popular, quick and easy. But when you grow up in a very cultural and culinary, epicenter as well, people have a certain standard. And so fresh is really important, what I'm saying, and high quality. So what was your grandmother like?
Well, she's still around. Matter of fact, I was visiting her an hour ago.
Mm,
We were just kind of reminiscing a little bit about the old days. The building where we used to live is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about that a little bit. But she was always into food. She's, her passion has always been being in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember her being just, like just on, like what they call the Energizer bunny. She would just go, go, go all day long because you can imagine cooking for, probably 30 people, 30 to 40 people every single day between the office workers and family. And, from scratch every single day, it was a nonstop thing for her. And she would never tire, she was just relentless.
And is she still doing a little bit on the side, or is she still full time, or what do you?
No, she still cooks for the family. She no longer, cooks for anybody else.
Right.
But we still all very much enjoy everything that she makes. It's a treat for us, really.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that I had immigrant parents, growing up, and both of them cooked, and thinking about different cultures around the world, if it's almost like senior citizens, what we call senior citizens tend to keep going, you know what I'm saying? Because they keep, whether in your, abuela's case, like just keep cooking, or they keep, feeding, and they keep moving, there's a certain purpose with it. And when you compare that to Americans, American senior citizens, they almost kind of lose that kind of drive, that motivation, from a health perspective, that in a way contributes to their decline a little bit. So I'm happy to hear that your grandmother is still very focused and still, going. She's like what, in her 80s or 90s or something like that?
She is in her late 70s. I think she's going to be
wow.
next year.
That's to me, that's a young grandma.
Yeah, she is, and she acts like a young grandma too.
That's awesome. So take us. So you studied, in San Francisco. You trained, there. So tell us what happened from there.
So after I finished my 2 years of culinary school, or towards the end, I was just fortunate enough that one of my cooking instructors was a friend of the chef at the time of the next place that I worked, which is a big resort, the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia.
Oh my God! I went to school right next to it.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah. There's a medical school. That's where I went to medical school, right next to the Greenbrier. Small world.
That is a small world.
Wow.
So
beautiful resort. Yeah.
Was that Lewisburg that you were in?
Lewisburg. Yeah. Yeah. The medical school in Lewisburg. That's exactly where I went to. Yeah.
I remember. Yeah. I used to go to Lewisburg all the time because the town where Greenbrier is so small. There was nothing.
It is very, very small.
Was the happening place.
It really was. And it still is. A lot of people retire there. So, wow. Small world.
Yeah. So, I was fortunate enough that my instructor and the chef at the time knew each other. And so my instructor said, hey, you know what, there's this place, maybe you want to, kind of go check it out. And this is what they do. They have a apprenticeship program. Mm-hmm. It's a 3-year program. Maybe you want to, give my friend a call and see if that's something you'd be interested in. And so I did. I did a phone interview, and then I flew out there for like a week-long sort of interview, I guess you would call it. They allowed me and my friend to go into the kitchen and sort of be helpers there, sort of fly on the walls there for a few days, mm-hmm. And be introduced to what the program sort of entailed and, the expectations and all that. And so I agreed to, once school was over, to go there afterwards. And what happened was the chef moved on, and then there was a new chef in there. So Chef Timmons, he said, welcome. You'll have to earn your stay for a year at first, and then depending on what we see out of you, then you can apply for the program, the apprenticeship program, and if you get in, then we'll see how that goes. So I paid my dues, I got into the program, and 4 years later, I graduated from that apprenticeship program, and through a lot of hard work, sleepless nights, and emotional stress, I made it, and I was very proud of it. And then after that, I came back home to the area, and I took a job as the executive chef for a fancy boutique hotel here in the area, and I was there for 4.5 years. And then after that, that's when the universe sort of decided to ruffle my feathers a bit. I decided to quit that job, and I was going to start my own gig. And that's when the universe intervened. I was in the middle of literally in the 10-minute break of taking a food safety and sanitation class. I went outside to stretch my legs for a bit, and then my phone rang, and it was this lady who I never met before that time, and she said, "Oh, I'm so and so. I'm a friend of your mother's. My mother owns a hair salon, so this lady would get her hair needs taken care of by my mom, and she knew that I was currently out of a job, and she said, 'Hey, I know this guy who is looking for a chef, and it's he's moving the facility from up in the hills to downtown Santa Rosa, and he's going to renovate this whole new facility, and the new kitchen's going to get built from scratch, and it's vegan, just so you know. But if you're interested, he's definitely looking for a qualified individual.'" And what happened was I was, growing up, I never intended to be a vegan chef or plant-based chef. That was, not the dream.
Right.
But at the time, my daughter was 2 years old, and making sure she was fed was important. And then also, I've always been a sucker for, getting new kitchens started, especially when all the equipment is brand new and shiny, and you can.
Why was that? Why does that? Why do you say that when you say you're a sucker? Because I read that you really enjoyed contributing towards startups. Like what is it about that kind of contribution fulfills you in some way? Why is that?
I think it's the notion of building the foundation for something. Anybody could think of this great building, this great, sort of monument. But if you don't have a solid foundation for it to stand on, the thing's going to topple over any second. So getting something started where you decide all the logistics, from a kitchen's perspective, where you go, okay, we have this empty room, and, we're envisioning the dishwasher to go here. The dishwasher is in this particular place. Will that make the entire kitchen flow correctly? And believe it or not, the two things that really decide a kitchen is where the dishwasher is and where the oven is, or the stove oven are. So you go, okay, can we have a good flow between from the moment the dirty dishes come in to all the way where the food, it's all plated and going out? Will the kitchen run smoothly? And getting to the point where you decide, from, square one where things are going to be placed. And again, all new equipment, everything is shiny. There's no scratches on it. And it's just shiny, for chefs.
Right.
It's kind of a cool thing to go into a restaurant supply place and see shiny equipment. I don't know what it is. It's just we're like squirrels looking at, walnuts there. Just so yeah, it's just setting up the foundation for a successful kitchen to start up, where you go, okay, I won't be around this place forever. Eventually, I will move on. But this place is going to be solid when I leave. So I think that's the startup, the the sucker for startup.
Hey guys, we're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey guys, this is Dr. Colin Zhu, aka the Chef Doc. I just want to take a few moments of your time to talk to you about something that I feel needs to give reflection and pause for. Is there something interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals? I know for me, I've been on the self-work journey for a decade now. And I remember in my personal experiences, through my doctor's journeys and also from traveling the world, I was always searching for the next step or thinking that happiness was a destination. However, it's not. What I found instead was that life was a process. And learning about life was also a process and a practice. And that the state of happiness and the state of joy and contentment was also a practice. For those of you who don't know, since I don't share that much on my podcast, is that I actually battle with anxiety, OCD, and in the past, episodes of depression. However, little by little, step by step, after seeking extra help, I've been able to achieve monumental things in my life that I've been eternally grateful for. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. BetterHelp is a sponsor of this podcast. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. There is a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's counselor network, which may not be locally available in many areas. The service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room, as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they can make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. A couple of reviews. This is by Rebecca Raymer. Becky has literally saved my life by truly understanding me. She has given me self-talk strategies and different thought pattern exercises that have made me stronger and a more aware person. I am so grateful to have found her. I've been to so many different therapists and none have helped me like Becky has. This is another review for Adam Johnson. I've had counselors before, both on BetterHelp and in person through work. And Adam, by far, is the best counselor I've ever talked with. I feel like he actually listens to and what is going on. He asks questions to help you navigate your thoughts. And you can tell that he is listening and wants you to help you. Visit betterhelp.com/thechefdoc, that's better HELP, and join the over 1.4 million people taking charge of their mental state with the help of an experienced professional. Special offer for ThriveBite listeners, get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/thechefdoc, THECHEFDOC. Thank you for listening, guys, and back to the episode. Welcome back to ThriveBite. Let's get back to the interview. Yeah. It's like that quote, and I'm paraphrasing, where you contribute to something and you make it better than when you first started. You know what I'm saying? So, right. And I do believe in that, meaning, in a way you're almost leaving behind an expression of yourself, so to speak. And, culinary arts is the arts for a reason. In a way you're expressing yourself, whether it's through your food or, through this, how you express yourself through the restaurant, or, so there's just different ways of leaving something behind. So I dig that. So that's really cool. So tell me about the next phase when you were transitioning and, you meet this, vegan, a vegan restaurant, the owner, and, they want to recruit, someone, and here you come along and, you haven't had any prior experience. My understanding is like, what was that like?
It was a bit surreal, and the reason for that is this. So when I got this phone call from a lady, I was interested again because it was a new facility, but she did mention that it was vegan, and for a regular chef, that is the least sexy sort of project to take on. For whatever reason, I agreed to talk with my now boss, Dr. Goldhammer. And he, explained to me kind of what the project entailed. And he said, you know what, we run this sort of facility, but we've never really had a chef. And because we're doing this expansion and we are expecting our census to go up, we really want the quality of the food to go up. And, that's why we're looking for a chef. And I already knew that it was vegan, but at first he told me, the first time I spoke with him, was like, oh, by the way, we also don't do any oil because we are very health oriented. This whole thing is oriented towards restoring all of our clients' health. So he tells me that, and I'm thinking, well, you know what? Actually, I'll take that back. He said we don't do any sugar. We don't do any sugar. And that sort of takes you back a little bit because, like, okay, that makes sense. You're trying to be healthy. You don't want people having dessert every after every meal. And I myself, I'm not a big dessert person, so I was thinking, well, if we need to make any sort of sweet treats, there's always dates, there's dried fruit, there's fruit juices. Fresh fruit is always great. So that's man, this is a whole vegan thing, and I don't know. And so he asked me after I spoke with him, he said, hey, why don't you come to what we now call the old facility? And he does like a weekly talk on Mondays. He said, why don't you come on Monday? You can listen to my weekly lecture and you sort of get a better sense of what we're doing. And, we go from there. So I agreed to go there. And, this facility was up in the hills, away from everything. There's, a couple of neighbors, quarter mile down the street, but, just in the middle of nowhere. There's all these people there in the kitchen and the staff. And then I listened to my boss speak. And he's a very smart man, very eloquent. And so when you listen to somebody who's really smart and passionate about what they do, it's kind of like, it charges you up. You're like, man, yeah, this sounds kind of cool. I can buy into this.
It's like a different take from your prior perception of, being vegan, right? Yeah. And which culinary school did you graduate from?
This is City College in San Francisco.
And I don't know too much about that one, but I would presume it's grounded in, French techniques and
this is
like classic, right? Like classic. Yeah. So, and, because for those in the audience, culinary school is most of them nowadays. And, we are getting more and more, vegan / plant forward, type of health supportive culinary schools out there now. But, most culinary schools are grounded in the French technique where they're, emphasizing the salt and the sugar, the, butter, eggs and things like that. So, as you're painting, this conversation back and forth when he's saying, no sugar or no oil, you're probably like scratching your head. You're like, what?
Oh, absolutely. He, after his lectures, he's like, oh, this is meet the staff and this is kind of what we do. And then that's when he said, oh, by the way, we also don't do any oil. And then I'm just kind of going, what is this guy talking about? What do you mean you don't do any oil? You can't cook without oil. I sort of get the sugar thing, but the no oil thing, that was just like,
it blew your mind.
I'm talking to him, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, this guy's cuckoo kind of a thing. For whatever reason, I agreed to meet him one more time, and he wanted to show me, the new facility where we are now. He wanted to show me sort of what the plan was. So essentially, we took over an apartment complex, which we then turned into, sort of like it's essentially a hotel. We call ourselves a vegan wellness center. And he's showing me like where the kitchen's going to go. And I could see painters and construction guys, ripping out carpets and 2x4s, and, the painters outside are stripping everything and, prepping to paint, a whole new paint job on the outside. And then they say, well, once we're done with the outside, we're going to go inside. And so, I could sort of start visualizing the place. And then he starts, talking numbers with me, which were definitely favorable. But then he like dropped the biggest bomb on me. He's like, he said, by the way, just want to let you know, we also don't do any salt.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so you're talking about going to culinary school and training and all that. And the very first thing that gets ingrained in your brain is make sure your food is seasoned properly. And while you're going to school, it's like, make sure you do it properly, or else you're not going to get an A. But then you go out in the real world and it's like season it properly or you're out of here. You won't have a job tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then suddenly this guy tells me, oh, by the way, we don't do any salt. And
that was the biggest bomb, right?
Yeah, biggest. And he was smart enough not to, give it to me all at once. He just sort of let me digest one piece at a time. And I was like, my head was spinning. I'm like, I can't do that. Not only can I not cook with oil, but without salt, I can't do my job. How am I going to make a dish and give it to somebody and be like, oh, hey, here, taste my food. It's flavorless.
Yeah. Right. Because sometimes salt, we use salt to kind of, when you say season, what we're doing is we're drawing out flavor out of the ingredients that you're cooking with, and so for you, that's kind of like, that's like one of your core, techniques as we're trained in, and taking that out is kind of like,
somebody tell me, be the chef here, but you're going to have a hand tied behind your back all the time. And so what happened was after my head stopped spinning, my thought process.
You sat down, right? Yeah,
I sat down. I said, okay, I guess I'm going to take this job, but I'm only going to do it for 6 months. And the only reason I'm going to take it is because, a steady paycheck to make sure I feed my daughter for the next 6 months will be good. But I do have full intentions of doing my own catering business, and being in California. There's going to be inevitably people who ask for sort of plant-based sort of meals. So, and I have no experience in that sort of area, because again, when you're classically trained, the vegetables are sort of what's on the side kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's like an afterthought.
Yeah. So I said, well, I'll just take this job 6 months. I'll be out of here and then I'll just learn something and then move on to what I really want to do. And that was almost 13 years ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, I guess at some point I might still do my catering thing, but
yeah. Yeah. So this is very interesting because, you're classically trained, you grew up, in a Mexican culture, very, very heavy emphasis. You have your abuela teaching you, from very, very young age. You're going to school, classically trained, and, you meet this guy, this physician, and he's going on and on about, probably probably similar to like, food is, health is food and food is health, and, health is wealth and things like that. And this is what we're doing. And up until that point, your perceptions of veganism is like, people who are, paper thin, probably just eating salads all day long. And, and now, he's saying, we're doing this, we're expanding. And, you're like, wow, this is beautiful. This is great. And, we're opening up a whole complex and having all kinds of things going on. And then we're doing no sugar, no oil, and no salt. And it puts you into a tailspin, right?
Yeah.
And I would imagine, and obviously we know now that you took the job and this is so many years ago, what did it teach you? What were the learning lessons that you've, accumulated over that time?
Well, the first lesson I got was that I myself was not in very good health. Just because I wanted to do a good job at this place, whether back at the time I was thinking, well, 6 months or not, I was still going to do my best no matter what. Mm-hmm. So just by, eating the food, just to make sure that it was as flavorful as possible, I lost a bunch of weight. I lost about 30 pounds in a fairly short amount of time. And my energy. And if you don't mind me asking, did you have any medical conditions prior to starting that job? I probably did, but I didn't necessarily go to a doctor
to get diagnosed or anything like that.
Yeah, I would assume that my blood pressure was high, and that my BMI was definitely way high. Probably, I don't know what other things I might have had. I was fairly young back then,
right?
But definitely high blood pressure for sure. Mm-hmm. And so I lost somewhere in the 30-pound range in a fairly short amount of time. Mm-hmm. And then my energy went way up. And so suddenly I was like, oh, I guess I was not as healthy as I thought, mm-hmm. Thinking, I'm a young 30-year-old, full of energy, but suddenly I actually have the energy to keep up with my 2-year-old daughter, mm-hmm. and where, my previous job, I didn't. So I'm like, oh, okay. So this is different. And then the second lesson I learned was very quickly as well is you don't need to cook with oil. Mm-hmm. In order to make flavorful food, you don't have to have oil every single time. Mm-hmm. And it was actually I usually lecture for people on the subject of the moment you use oil in your cooking, you bind yourself to needing salt. Because what happens is any sort of food that you taste, whether it's a stir fry, a dressing, a roasted potato sort of thing, mm-hmm. If you use oil in your cooking, what happens is, as the food goes into your mouth, the oil coats your taste buds. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like putting a blanket over your taste buds. And then the flavor doesn't register. Mm-hmm. So in order to fix that problem, people use salt so that suddenly you accentuate the flavors, and then the message goes from the taste buds to the brain, where it's like, oh, okay, this is rosemary roasted potatoes, or this is a raspberry walnut dressing, or mm-hmm. whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But once I removed the oil from the food, I was beginning to really taste what a raspberry really tasted like, mm-hmm. or what just plain celery really, what its flavor really was. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of cool in a way that I was actually tasting food sort of all over again.
Interesting. I'm sure that was fascinating for you.
It was. And some of the items, I can remember celery specifically. I was like, oh, wow, this is celery's pretty nice. It's really tasty.
Right.
I had never really tasted it before.
And when you're saying you're removing oil, you're referring to not adding oil, as opposed to, the natural oils that come with certain foods.
Correct. So when I talk about no salt, no oil, no sugar, I'm describing not adding any oil that comes from a bottle, mm-hmm. Or any salt that comes from a box or a package, mm-hmm. Or any, white refined sugar or rock sugar or whatever. Mm-hmm. So no added, if it's the natural sugar in an apple, or the natural oil in a walnut, or, the natural sodium in the celery, that's all perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. It's just not adding anything on top of that.
Awesome. And I'm sure for, any chefs that are listening in, that's a very, very, huge uptaking to kind of, go through, because that's literally what you're trained to do. You know what I'm saying? So you almost kind of have to relearn certain things and kind of bob and weave and figure out what type of alternatives, whether it's food substitutes or ingredient substitutes, or different types of techniques that you would have to use, right?
Right. Well, really, the techniques stay the same, and I was very fortunate to be classically trained, so that all the tricks of the trade, I knew. It's just applying them in sort of a different way, because roasting is still roasting. It still happens in the oven.
Mm-hmm.
Sauteing still happens in a pan. The way you chop things is the same. You still use a nice sharp knife and a cutting board. And so or at least I still have all those tricks. And I was just, sort of redirecting the wheel a little bit.
Right.
I didn't have to reinvent it. I was just redirecting it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great analogy.
Because definitely all my old chef friends think I'm crazy. They think I'm weird. What the hell are you doing?
So what did you observe in the clientele that came over the years, and you fed them this food, and paint us a little bit of a picture of initially when you first started to now, and I'm sure over time you've probably refined how you've served and cooked and stuff like that. Like what was the feedback like?
Oh, the feedback is pretty much stayed constant. So our average stay at the facility is about 2 weeks. And we've had people for multiple years. We got some people that come for 2-3 days. It's sort of the range is pretty wide. But an average stay is about 2.5 weeks, and we always see a drop in weight for everybody, and the blood pressure sort of comes to normal levels. Everybody's high blood pressure comes down. And they come in taking, 7, 8, 10 different types of medications. And when they leave, they don't take anything anymore. They got a lot more energy. We see a lot of people who come in using a cane, or they sort of limp a little bit when they walk. When they leave, they're perfectly fine. They're walking, normal like anybody else. And that's just from the eye test, what I can see. We in the kitchen staff are not allowed to know any sort of personal medical information.
Right.
So I'm sure the benefits are even deeper and greater than what I can see.
Right. And you're still there. You're still working at this facility.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it almost sounds like almost like a wellness retreat of sorts.
Yeah, we call ourselves a wellness center.
Awesome. I, in my circles, you do hear of retreats like this. But the flip side is that we need more of this, what I'm saying? Because in our current healthcare landscape, in my opinion, there isn't enough, that is done, on this front. 80% of chronic lifestyle related diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, etc., in our country, is preventable. We could treat it, prevent it, and reverse some cases, a lot of these chronic diseases with, actual food. And there's mountains and mountains of evidence and research to back this up. And I'm sure your boss, your director is, utilizing that information to be able to serve this clientele that you are also serving as well. So I think it's a fantastic venture that you're on, and, to be able to see your own health journey, to see the weight coming off, and to witness your energy coming up, and to witness all these different clients that have come over the years to reducing medication and reducing weight, and hope, like you said, who knows, a little bit more, has been very gratifying for you, wouldn't you say? Hey guys, we're going to be taking a short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thrive Bites. Let's get back to the interview.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was towards the first few years of me being there, I had this sort of constant struggle of, the voice inside my head. And then my friends telling me, what are you doing? This is not what you train for kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But then, I had that sort of voice in my head, but then my eyes are telling me a very different story of like, this is the way, this is the future. This is, food is such a big and important part of our lives. And yet the vast majority of people are doing it wrong. So you're like way ahead of your time,
Yeah.
And this is, my eyes are telling me one thing. The voice in my head is telling me something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've always been so passionate about being a chef. So it took me a little bit of time to sort of, get the two sides to sort of come to an agreement kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. On an everyday basis, we see people that they leave in such much better shape than when they came in. Mm-hmm. We have this guy right now who's lost 108 pounds. He's been there for about 4 months, I think. Mm-hmm. And, he's doing great. Mm-hmm. When I talk with him, his sort of mental clarity is so much better. Again, he's lost over 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And he is just happy. He is, sort of well-grounded. And I don't know when he's leaving, but when he does, he's like, ready to take on the world kind of a thing.
Yeah. It gives them what's great about, a diet and lifestyle. For me, diet is huge, but it's not the only thing as well. We also have to be able to take care of our emotional and mental health as well. And, physically move, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a huge part, right? And so when you're describing this particular client and saying, wanting to take on the world, what it tells me is that you kind of, in a way, quote unquote, treat them and fix up their foundation a little bit. So in a way, they can have more control, in their lives. You know what I'm saying? And medication and procedures and surgery, which is most of our healthcare system, is something in a way out of their control. When actually, when you look at the top 10 killers of causes of death in our country, a lot of it is related to lifestyle, in terms of our choices every single day with diet and lifestyle. And so in a way, it's like, it's a beautiful thing where you're giving them back their power to take control of their lives. Right. And, it's interesting how you're describing this dichotomy of, you training as a chef to, be that expert and master of, the culinary arts and food and all this stuff. And it's a very interesting story that you're painting where you didn't anticipate yourself being in a position where, you're actually using that food and improving people's lives with it.
Oh yeah. It was definitely a big sort of eye-opening, sort of soul-changing kind of thing. See, all the effects that we have. We essentially, as a society, the American people, we are suffering from king's diseases. Back in the day, kings, only the king suffered from the high blood pressure and the diabetes and the stroke and all of that, because him and the few, of the royalty were the type of people who ate the diet that we use now, all the excess fat and the excess salt and sugar and the rich meals every single time, where the rest of the population, they ate the grains and the
food
potatoes.
From actual Mother Nature.
Correct. So, back in the day, only the king got those sort of diseases. They call them the king's diseases because nobody else got them.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with the SAD diet, the standard American diet, we're all in that club where we can all be we can all suffer from the king's diseases.
Yeah.
And it's and as you were saying, most of the major killers in America are related to food. And if we can just educate people and teach them how to eat properly, and still have the food be flavorful, we can cure, reverse, and eliminate a lot of these things.
Yep. You got it.
Diabetes, the stroke, and all this hypertension, and all of that.
Yep.
These are curable and reversible diseases.
Mm-hmm.
But because the medical industry is about, well, what are your symptoms? Here's your prescription. Go get your pills. And all of that only treats symptoms. They don't really treat the problem.
Yeah.
And it's cycle.
One of my favorite analogies, one of my favorite analogies is, when I'm counseling a patient, it's when we're prescribing medications and surgery, not to say that they're not necessary. They're a very important part, for healthcare, but, when it's necessary. But, when we're covering up symptoms, like you're saying, we're like mopping up the floor instead of turning off the faucet,
Exactly.
And that's essentially what we're doing. And it's a huge paradigm shift. And this is literally a whole different discussion, going back from, medical schools and how we're trained and, all the way up the line. So, and even drawing parallels to medical training and culinary training, it's a very interesting because they have very similar hierarchies, but there's actually a lot of schools now that are more focused on health supportive and going more plant-based, popping up every now and then. So it's super important, and you can tell where the wave is going, like where the direction is going. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I see the, local medical facilities and hospitals and the ads on TV and radio where you're starting to see that shift, where they're getting more focused on, hey, food is actually important, and having some nutritional sort of understanding actually can really improve your health.
Yeah, exactly.
There's still a lot of work to be done, but it's definitely shifting. The wave is starting to pick up strength and speed. For sure.
Yeah. Well, it's like the work that you're doing, and spreading that message. This is how we continue to move that needle and push forward. So, so thank you for, contributing to that. So, I love this. We're going to close out. So one of my favorite questions to ask is, it's a two-parter. One is, how do you personally thrive? And what that means is, what gets you up in the morning, what fuels your fire, why do you do what you do, right? So, and the second part to that question is, more action oriented for our audience listeners. So, you've talked about, the no sugar, no oil, and no salt, right? So is there any tips that you can give based on those where, how would you substitute each one of those for our audience listeners? So let's start with the first one.
Okay. So what gets me up in the morning is really just knowing that when I go to work and we go make some food, we're constantly, getting new people at the facility. And a lot of them haven't been there before. So one of the things that really gets me up is like when I get to work and you see this person arrive and they got the sort of deer in headlights look, kind of like, oh my God, what I get myself into. I'll take a moment to say, hey, I'm the chef here. Welcome. We're going to take good care of you. And then a day or two later, they'll come up to me and they'll say, sometimes it takes about a week, but, I'll still take it. And they say, wow, chef, I really did not think I was going to be able to do this. I really did not think that the food was going to be flavorful. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I'm really enjoying my time here. Can I take you home with me? I can tell you that from people.
Yeah.
So that's always a big motivator for me, as well as the fact that aside from my job, I have all these other projects going on, which are sort of all integrated. So I really enjoy sort of doing a little bit of everything, even though I have this sort of main base here at True North. But between, doing interviews such as this, talking about my cookbooks or my online cooking program, giving online classes. I used to do hands-on classes, but with the current situation, I put a stop to that for the moment. But yeah, just being able to teach people in different platforms, a way for them to improve their health. It's rewarding for me because the whole atmosphere did it for me. And I know what a big improvement it was. So, giving that to others is definitely a motivator. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of your question, tips and tricks. That's sort of a big question.
Yeah. No, just give like one of each, so if someone's in the kitchen right now, the recipe calls for, maybe like added sugar, salt, or oil, just maybe if you can offer just like one switch, for each one of those. So
sure.
It gives her brain churning. So
like for sauteing, people think that sauteing always happens with some oil or butter because it's been done that way for, centuries, from generation to generation. And people, myself included, back at the time, believe that if you don't use any oil in the pan, things are going to stick. Things are going to burn. And that is not true. I do it with, what I call a dry saute, meaning you just heat up the pan and start sauteing your onions and your garlic and mushrooms or carrots or whatever it is. And it actually, they don't burn, they don't stick. If you're right there in the pan and you stir, you have a long enough window to where what happens is the food heats up, the onions and the carrots or whatnot. Mm-hmm. As they start to sweat, they release their own water content in there. Mm-hmm. So that cools them down. It cools down the pan. So you have a long enough window to where you can saute and brown your onions and garlic and carrots and mushrooms without them burning. And they're still caramelized and beautiful. And so it's possible. Mm-hmm. Just, that's what I can tell you, that it is possible. I do it every day. I teach people how to do this on a daily basis. I know that most people don't believe it because they've never seen it. They've never experienced it, but it is possible. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As far as, I mentioned earlier, if you cook with oil, you bind yourself to needing some salt. So the less oil in your cooking, the less you cover up your taste buds with the oil. And so the more flavor that actually gets through, and which means the less need for salt mm-hmm. in your food. Mm-hmm. And then as far as the sugar, I would say dates, in particular, medjool dates have been my saving grace. We make all sorts of desserts, from pies to crepes to, what else do we do? From like truffles and all sorts of things using dates. Mm-hmm. So the no sugar thing, it's really the easiest thing to mm-hmm. conquer. And then if you're looking for specific recipes, I have a couple of cookbooks, Bravo mm-hmm. Cookbook, Bravo Express, and then I recently created a website, bravopb.com, mm-hmm. Where I have an online cooking course where I teach sort of the basics and then recipes step by step. Where you can see all of these things done from start to finish. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping to film the second course in August.
Awesome.
And just, keep going. We got course number 2 and course number 3, and then we'll see how how it goes from there.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I was about to, conclude with, how do people reach you, but you already did that already. So, so that's a great segue. And, I wish you much success. And, please, check out his websites and his books and recipes and courses, because it is very, very rare, as a chef, to really integrate yourself, to actually be willing. I think that's the hardest part. It's not really learning every different, things nowadays. We're just, we have so many sources now, but now it's more about like, are you willing to make that leap? And it's the same thing with changing behavior, for medicine. It's like a lot of the times it's really just behavioral change, and being able to give up the things that make you sick. Right. So thank you for, taking the chance for yourself to take on the job, for you to learn, fast forward so many years, and for you to be at this moment where, you can contribute to so many people's health, and make everything still taste, wonderful. So thank you again for being on the show.
Hey, my pleasure, Colin. And just a last send off. One of the things I really wanted to do was to make this whole teaching, people to be able to have access to this information. So if people go to the website, bravopb.com, the course is a one-time payment for $20 for lifetime access. I really just wanted to get my money back, my investment back, and I wanted to have it available for everybody. Mm-hmm. The idea is to be able to help everyone to improve their health. And so if the information is available out there and it's $20 for lifetime access, I think that's a great deal. So, hopefully people will tune in and check it out. Definitely.
And we'll put those links and notifications, in the show notes, when this comes out. So, Chef Bravo, thank you so much for taking the time out, and, being with us on the show today. Guys, this has been another episode of Thrive Bites. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and follow. And if you feel that this is of benefit for someone else, please share this as well. And we will see you on the next one. Hey guys, that was another episode of Thrive Bites. If you like that episode, please subscribe and follow for new episodes. And don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts.